Hello and welcome to interest.co.nz. I'm Gareth Vaughan with another of our double shot interviews, and I'm joined by John Boddy, who is the Managing Director of ANZ Wealth. Welcome in, John.
Hi, Gareth.
Now, John's here to talk to us about KiwiSaver. Now, John, obviously it's an election year this year, and KiwiSaver, as we know, is a very political issue at the best of times. Now, we've had Winston Peters talk about a government-guaranteed Kiwi fund that he's keen to introduce should he get the opportunity to, and he said that this would be a bottom line in any coalition negotiations. Now, we know that potentially he could hold the balance of power following the election. What's your take on his concept?
Well, look, when I think about KiwiSaver, and I look at the experience of, almost 6 years, the one thing that strikes me about KiwiSaver is it's working. Over 2 million people invested, 16 billion under management. So my take is I'd be very concerned if we had we were on a route of successful retirement savings where people are getting more and more engaged, that if we made a significant change to the landscape. And I think the one thing our investors tell us is the most frustrating thing they find about KiwiSaver is when the system changes. So look, we'd be very anti any significant change to the settings of KiwiSaver, to the structure of KiwiSaver, and believe that we need to build on the existing success to really take it forward.
Now, he's raised a couple of reasons why he wants to bring in this change. One is being to have more money invested within New Zealand. I think around half is currently invested, half of KiwiSaver money is now invested within New Zealand, and also to reduce fees to managers. Are those good enough reasons to make a change?
Well, I think you've got to look at what you're trying to achieve when you think with policy settings. Now, the role of us as a fund manager is to do a few things, one of which is to get the right asset allocation for our customers. And by that I mean that we're investing in the right markets and we're spreading our risk. Now, very few managers, if any, would argue that 100% allocation to New Zealand is wise investing, because we know what happens in economies, and we've seen crashes in Asia, problems in the US market. So we don't want all our investments to be basically in one country. So we certainly think that single country concentration is not a great idea for an investment construction of a portfolio. In terms of fees, look, it's a competitive market. Having the current group of default providers, having another 10, 15, 20 KiwiSaver providers, fees will be set by the market, and fees will go down as scale increases. And I don't think changing the structure of the scheme to lessen competition, lessen the investment in the market, will necessarily help consumers long term, just with a view of getting lower fees.
Now, another issue that's bound to come up this year is the one of compulsion.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, with auto-enrolment, is there still an argument that we even need compulsory KiwiSaver?
Yeah, look, my view is auto-enrolment is the preferred way to go forward. Compulsion, I think it has its merit, and I think you can build a strong case for it. But personally, my view is we should have auto-enrolment. We should actually try and bring auto-enrolment forward. And we would like to see auto-enrolment jump the queue in front of starting up contributions to the super fund again, because we think that's a better long-term platform for funding superannuation needs. And
we've also got the review of the default provider regime going on, and we should hear a result of that probably in a month or so. Yep. Now, obviously ANZ is one of the 5 default providers at the moment. There's been a suggestion that this could be increased up to 10 potentially.
Yep.
Now, firstly, do you have any concern that ANZ could lose its default provider status? And secondly, do you think increasing the number of default providers would be good for the market? I mean, aside from what it might be for ANZ.
Oh, look, certainly ANZ has reapplied for its default status, and we'd be very keen to remain a default provider. We think we've added a lot to the industry, both in terms of the returns we produce for investors, and you just have to look at the Morningstar FundSource awards. The work we've done on the kind of the structure of investment portfolios, and we think we contribute a lot to it. So we'd like to stay a provider. In terms of going to more, look, I don't think it's a big issue either way. Fundamentally, competition's good, and we're strong believers of that. As long as the industry is well governed, well managed, and there's really good visibility around who the new providers are and their structure and their contribution to things like investor education, their governance. Having 10 providers, it's manageable for the industry.
Now, the government's also come out and said that they're going to keep the conservative setting on the default funds. Australia, with its compulsory super scheme, they have the lifestyles setting. Do you think maybe the government should have looked at a change from the Conservative setting here?
Yeah, we think so. We're a little bit disappointed, and we think it's early enough in KiwiSaver's life that it's early enough to make a change without people having massive balances that are going to be impacted. And fundamentally, the argument holds the same. If you're 25 years old, you've got 40 years minimum of investing. Being in a default fund is going to mean you're going to have less savings, less retirement savings. So it's not maximised people's opportunity. It also, I think, in a way, it stops a lot of the natural investor education that would take place by putting people through different growth funds, from conservative up to growth over their lifetime. So I think we're missing an opportunity here, and we're a little bit disappointed, despite our lobbying, that there was no change.
Now, a couple of other points, I guess, from a sort of the political perspective, before we leave that one alone.
Yeah.
The retirement age is a bit of an old chestnut, whether that should be increased from 65 to 67.
Yeah.
And then the other one I was keen to get your views on is using KiwiSaver to, I guess, help fund to fund a deposit for a house. There were a few changes made around that last year. Seems to be a bit easier to do that now. More people doing it. The government's encouraging people to do that.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the retirement age, firstly, what are your thoughts? And secondly, on that, using KiwiSaver for house deposits, what do you think of that?
Yeah, look, we often get asked about our view on the retirement age, and I think it's a red herring, to be quite honest. And if you think about what we need to achieve as a nation of retirement savings, is we need more people involved in KiwiSaver. We need more people to understand how much they need to have saved when they retire, and we need more people to understand how much that equals as a weekly, fortnightly, and monthly payment into KiwiSaver. So I think the debate has to be, how do we resolve that problem, as opposed to having views around 65, 67, 69, because I don't think it's going to solve the retirement savings problem. In terms of your second comment about first-time buyers, look, it's an interesting one. I actually think it's a good idea, and the experience I've been talking to young people is they don't understand why they would invest in KiwiSaver at 20, 21, 22, whether they're going to be buying a house. So the first home buyers option in there is quite a nice way to get them into KiwiSaver, understanding what it is, but it also meets where they think they're going to be in their life. So it's an interesting feature of a retirement savings scheme, but I think it does work when you talk to the consumers.
Now, obviously, the big banks have been getting more and more dominant in KiwiSaver in terms of the total funds under management, obviously led by ANZ. Just wondering whether you think that, is this really good for the market? Are we in danger of squeezing out some of the smaller, innovative KiwiSaver providers? And is this just a really good cross-selling opportunity for banks?
Look, I think history shows that it hasn't squeezed out the other providers, and there's probably more fund managers launched in the last 3 years than there has been in the last 20. The banks are attracting funds to them because they're good managers. The returns have been pretty good, and we're very proud of our returns. And they have a good distribution business, so they can connect to their customers. So it's the market dynamic. So it's kind of an argument about whether banks are good or banks are bad is not really the argument. The argument is, are the banks doing a good job in funds management from a return perspective, from a governance perspective, from a communication perspective, and from accessibility and helping their customers learn more? And I think they are, and that's why the customers are coming to the banks and staying with them.
Now, I just wanted to ask also about the disclosure regime. Now, just wondering whether you think there might be an argument for some sort of risk-adjusted measurement of returns, so that, for example, if you're in a conservative fund, you can measure it as such, and if you're in a growth fund, you can measure it as such.
Yeah, look, I think there is an argument, but it's a question of where you put it in the journey of investor education. So, the first cab off the rank is complete transparency around fees, and I think we've come a long way in the last 12 months, and we're certainly an advocate for going even further on fees. The second one is to be able to line up performance of similar funds in one place and be able to compare them. The third one is to have some transparent, independent monitor of funds like Morningstar, FundSource, and so forth. So once we get all that done, I think we can then look at a more sophisticated regime. But I think to jump now to risk-adjusted returns when we're still already starting the investor education process, it's just a bridge too far right now.
And what about benchmarking? Do you think there's scope for that as well?
Yeah, I think there is. I think, and for the same arguments, I think benchmarking is important. Look, but fundamentally, anything we can do in the industry to give investors more information to make better choices of where they put their retirement savings, we should all embrace.
Now, Michael Littlewood had a bit to say about KiwiSaver last week in one of his reports. Now, one of the things he came out with and said, which I've got here, is we can only measure real success against the counterfactual. What would New Zealanders have done in the absence of KiwiSaver? This kind of an interesting comment. I'm just wondering, what's your view in terms of whether KiwiSaver has changed New Zealanders' saving habits?
Yeah, well, I think we look at the history and we've got the number of people in KiwiSaver, the amount saved. Now, some of those people would have saved without question. But then you kind of go to the 20-year-old student who's saving, the 25-year-old apprentice plumber who's saving, the 30-year-old who's been working for 8 years has now got $30,000 in their KiwiSaver account. And then you go to people who think, actually, I now understand how a managed fund works and I've now connected with my retirement savings. So none of those things would have happened without KiwiSaver. What would have happened would be potentially more people investing more money in real estate. And as you know, real estate is a growth asset, and we've seen some cases around the world where if real estate was your only investment on retirement, it would have been a pretty dangerous time over the last 5 years.
Indeed. Thanks a lot for that, John. That's John Body, who's the Managing Director of ANZ Wealth, and I'm Gareth Vaughan at interest.co.nz.